welcome to Dropping the Gloves. Take two. I get so excited. And I'm excited because we got a guy. We do this segment on the show. It's a haul or not. And this guy, it's a pretty interesting, I don't know, it could go either way, but David Backus is on the show. Very excited. David, thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
So where are you at right now? Back home in Minnesota?
In Minnesota currently, and enjoying a nice hot summer that the summer's given us.
It is good. So we do these interviews every so often. I only interview guys I like, respect, want to talk to. I don't like interviewing. We did one interview I didn't want to do. It ended up terrible. We didn't even air it. So when I heard you retired, I was like, we got to get him on the show. This guy I have battled against for years, going back to college, going back years and years and years. And we've never really talked to each other other than a one car ride from the airport to Mont Tremblant. And that was it.
That's it.
And with all due respect, I hated your guts because you played such a physical style of hockey. I respected the heck out of you. So I'm excited. And we didn't talk before, and this is going to be good. I'm excited to get this conversation going. So I did a little digging. You obviously grew up in Minnesota. You were all conference in high school, all metro, all state. You were a finalist for Mr. Minnesota Hockey Award. Growing up in Minnesota, where it's so hockey crazy, did you just know NHL or bust?
I actually didn't think I was going to play in the NHL. My goal was to get a scholarship to play D1 hockey, and that was my goal. And I wasn't even thinking about the NHL until I was in junior, and all of a sudden people with NHL logos on their jackets are all of a sudden staying after to say hi. And I'm like, what are you talking to me for? There's other guys I figured they were more interested in. And all of a sudden agents and all the works are coming out, and you're like, I might get drafted. This might be kind of cool. The idea of making it to the NHL though, I guess I'm a realist and I know the numbers and I'm a numbers nerd. So I said, chances are I'm not going to make it, but if I can get free school and not have college debt to start my life, then hockey served its purpose for me. And turns out it more than served its purpose for me. So
Minnesota hockey's like 1A, 1B, then you got the Vikings and the Twins. So did you skate with any NHL guys in the off season? Was there because I know when I was playing in Minnesota, we would have these camps and there would always be high school kids buzzing around just to kind of fill up spots. Were you exposed to the NHL guys when you were in high school at all?
No, I looked up to, I'm sad to say, the Gopher guys when I was younger. The Wild weren't there until I was a freshman, sophomore in high school. So I admittedly owned a Wild jersey at one time and looked up to those guys, I'd say, through high school, but was never really integrated. I think I was a late bloomer too. I was probably 6'3", 175 pounds leaving high school and couldn't really control my long limbs and really had to sort it out starting in the junior game and then getting to college where you got the meal plan, you're able to spend a ton of time in the weight room, just playing the weekends. I think that was huge for my development that I was able to, put on some meat onto my bones. Otherwise, these guys that were playing the NHL at 18, 19, 20, especially back when we started, I would have been broken in a million pieces and never probably recovered. So, I was a late bloomer, so I never was really engrossed into the pro hockey on a personal level, but like watching Darby Hendrickson and local guys that played for the Wild, to me, those were the guys that was like, that's so cool. If I could, ever do that, that would be a dream come true. And never for the hometown, but definitely, played my fair share of games and fooled them for maybe longer than I should have.
Definitely longer than you should have. So Minnesota hockey here is big now, right? The guy's got that YouTube channel, the lettuce, the salad. Was it big when you were playing?
No, I don't even recall that when I was playing.
No kidding. So how short was is your hair always been crew cut? You never had the flow?
I had some long curly locks that my current wife, who was my girlfriend back in high school, would pull through the cap, and photos are available for the right price probably. But I had some curly locks. I can't say I had the, middle of my back or covering my complete ear or some of the less than appetizing styles, the full mullet that are intentional. I think if there was a mullet back then, it was either unintentional or someone actually thought it was cool due to family lineage. But
not ironic like it is now. Like, look at me, I got a mullet. Isn't it cool?
yeah.
Listen, I rattled off all your awards, all conference, all Metro, almost Mr. Hockey in Minnesota, which is a huge deal. Why did you not go to the Gophers then? If you mentioned they were your team, you're from Minnesota, it makes perfect sense. Go to the U of M. Why would you go to Mankato, which is a relatively small school for our listeners, kind of outside of Minnesota? Why not go to U of M or even St. Cloud, which is, I would argue a little bit better school at that time than Mankato was?
Or Duluth,
or Duluth, yeah.
Bemidji, perhaps, or any of the other.
Right.
D1.
There's a lot of options. What were your options like your senior year?
Well, I committed after my junior year. Mankato came to me. There was a connection between my high school coach and the coach, Troy Jutting, in Mankato. And they came to me and were offering me a 90% scholarship. And I was like, wow, that was my goal. Like I said, to play Division I college hockey, but I wanted to play for the Gophers. And I was talking informally with the Gophers, and I went to them and I said, just say you'll give me a 10% scholarship and I won't take the deal in Mankato, just to show me that you're actually really interested. And I got the company line of go back, play another year. We'll see what happens. And, maybe after your senior year, you play a little junior, maybe there'll be more interest then. And I said, you know what, Mankato stuck their neck out and they believe in me. I'm going to show them some loyalty and let's do this deal. Well, I played my senior year in high school, and then I played one more in junior and had a ton of success that year with Lincoln. And then Mankato upped me to 100%. I think, the way it works, it's only a 1-year deal. I probably could have left, but that's just not who I am. And I think it worked out pretty well for me. I was able to go to Mankato as a freshman, step in, play big minutes, play all situations, get into a leadership role in year 2, be a captain in year 3, and leave for the professional ranks after that. So I think my trajectory was perfect for me, especially playing on some big ice and having to get my feet moving a lot more for a guy that never was a great skater. So I think, God works in mysterious ways, and that was the path that I was supposed to be on. And thankfully, either the counsel I was getting or my own intuition, I was able to follow that path.
And you nailed it when you said that you would have maybe not gotten the opportunity, because those Gopher teams, they were loaded with first-round draft picks, especially those first few years. They had Vanek and Paulie Martin and Keith Ballard. Like, they had some Troy Riddle was there, who's a lesser-known star. So going to Mankato, you played three productive years at Mankato. Your points were pretty consistent across the board. I think you have 39, 40, and 42 in 3 years, which is very good in college hockey. It's a very tight checking game, especially in the WCHA at that time. It was very high level. What did you attribute your success to walking right in? Was it just the different regimen you did for training? Was it the coaches, or just you were a big boy? Like, I remember playing against you. Tech would go up to Mankato and I was like, gosh, his Bacchus guy is a mule in front of the net.
Well, that's high accolades from your big body. But I think the success was more of, I took my time. Like, I wasn't in a rush to get there. When Tim Jackman left, which would have been my, year after my senior year in high school, my full junior year, Mankato all of a sudden said, hey, we got a spot for you. Come join us. And I guess in my own head, I said, if they wanted me to be in a regular role, they would have had me regardless, whether Tim Jackman left or didn't leave. And now they've got a spot. I'm not saying I wouldn't play every night, but is it more productive to be the guy or one of the 3 guys in Lincoln with Danny Ehrman and Ryan Patolny and myself, to have success, play a ton of minutes. And, then that was our draft year, and then figure out what the heck happens in the draft, and then go to Mankato and still have 4 years to develop there. If, it wasn't the hurry up. I feel like now it's like, get these guys in the NHL and get them going. And like, if you don't play right after your draft year, the second year after your draft year, your time's ticking. And if you haven't played a regular role by 25, like, too bad, maybe you catch on with a bad team that just needs a body. But I just think the development, and maybe it's because it was a man's game more back then, of like, you couldn't come in undersized or under strength or a step slow or not have the instincts to get by a guy, or he's going to take your head off. And that was just the way the game was played. So I think I took my time. I played the extra year junior. I went to Mankato for 3, even after a lockout. Didn't rush to play in the A that year, and everything just seemed to have been paved, for me to have the success that I did. And then I went after my junior year, went and played some games in Peoria, and really was a wake up call to me of, humbling of, I was kind of the guy in college, and then I got to that AHL level. I'm like, dang, there's men out here, even a bigger step, and I got to work my butt off this summer. And then not making the team out of camp the next year, playing up until Christmas in the minors again was kind of devastating to my pride a bit, because I'd always made every team. And now it's like, hey, you're in the minors. You left school early. You could have had a senior in school. Now you're in the minors. You're in Peoria, Illinois. No offense to Peoria, Illinois, but it wasn't the most grandiose spot to be. On top of the difference in pay, I was making $50,000 a year instead of the $550 I would have made in the NHL. Instead of flying chartered planes and staying in Ritz-Carlton, you're on the bus and staying in whatever Super 8's got a couple extra rooms at night. So to me, it was a motivating factor to prove them wrong that I should have been on that team. And then when I got my chance under Andy Murray, and he kind of switched me to center in a big man's game in the Western Conference then, I just think of all the things that fell into place for me. It was just someone else had their fingers on that story, and I'm glad, to have lived it.
You just said yes and kept rolling,
Yeah.
which is important. You mentioned this. I didn't know you were a winger in college and got switched to center. How hard is that?
Well, I think the godsend is I was in St. Louis, and it was dead last place team in the league, and 10,000 fans at games pre-COVID. Obviously, it was like, this is not getting any lower. This is your best chance to learn on the job. And Andy Murray was a great teacher, so he would sit down with me and analyze and protect me for the first while and not give me the D-zone starts. And I just think it was a great opportunity for me, and ran with it, and it was proved to be successful. Was able to play with some incredible wingers. I had one line that was TJ Oshie and Paul Correa at one time. Like, what? Like TJ Oshie and Alex Steen, and we were match up against other teams' best lines and winning that matchup. And Ken Hitchcock would giggle to me afterwards, like, how miserable that is for an opposing coach when their top line's getting outcompeted and outworked and outscored by our, and it was just an awesome ride.
So backing up a little bit, you were drafted in 2003, which is arguably the best draft class of all time. And, to our listeners, like, go look it up if you're not familiar. It's like the list just goes on and on. Did you realize at that time that was like a special group you were coming up with, or did you just kind of just not realize that?
Outside of my agent saying that this is a deep draft class, I guess I wasn't, feeling the gravity of, Marc-Andre Fleury, Eric Stahl, go down the list. It's incredible. So, able to play with some of those guys along the way, another fellow second rounder and Patrice Bergeron in Boston, and, Getzlaff and Anaheim, all the guys that I was able to play with in that draft class seemed to have something special. So I also look back at that, and it seems like if you drafted well that year, first and second round, you set yourself up for some really good success. And if you missed, you struggled for a while, and, do the math. Like, that was a good year to make a great pick in the first round.
So then you played a little bit in the AHL, but you get called up into the NHL a few years later. And then less than a minute into your first shift, you get your first NHL point, assisting a goal by Doug Weight. I mean, obviously he's like a well-established veteran, probably someone you looked up to. How did that feel, especially helping out one of the better veterans in the league at that point?
I think I overstayed my shift for sure in Pittsburgh. And it sounds better than it was. The puck hit me in the hand coming up the wall. I just sealed the wall, went behind the net to Radek Dvorak, and then he passed it out front to Dougie Weight. And it actually is worse than that. I was carrying the puck down the wall, absolutely got smashed into the wall down. I stood up sealed the wall. Puck hit me in the hand. Dvorak, Doug Waite, goal celebration, cloud nine. So I hate to downplay my own story, but it wasn't the most glorious assist in the world. But the team hadn't won in like 10 or 12 games straight. And then we beat Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh on Sidney Crosby coin night. So that was a memory that I obviously have still vivid.
Take that, Sid. Did you know you got the assist when it hit you, or were you waiting for the announcer?
Oh, I'm always waiting for the announcer. You know that. It's like,
I know that. I'm like, come on, baby.
I should have got there. Come on. Yeah. Like I sent that cross ice and it hit the D man, but he really didn't have possession. Come on. Like those are momentum and confidence, either boosters or killers at times, especially when things are tough and you just need to scratch and claw for one. And then all of a sudden you might get a little feeling back in your game. So
there's nothing worse than as a D man, you shoot it, and the puck goes in. It's like, how many sticks did it hit? Did it bank out? Did it bank off someone's shin pad? And you're like, come on, you never get the assist. And when you only have like 11 career points, David,
they all matter.
They all matter. I can like vividly list all my assists. It's sad. All right, let's fast forward. So you had a good first few years in St. Louis. Very good. Let's be honest. You played really, really good. 2008 rolls around. You're an RFA. This is tricky. So the offer sheet is a thing where if you're RFA, another GM can come in and offer you a contract. You can sign it. Your team has, I think, a week to match it.
Yep.
I didn't realize that you signed an offer sheet. I was just starting off in the league. I didn't know what was going on. I just learned this like a couple days ago, and it fascinates me. So you're still a young kid. And you don't have to answer the question if you don't. Were you not happy with St. Louis? Were the negotiations not going the way you wanted to go? How does that work where all of a sudden Vancouver slides in? They obviously, contact your agent. They offer you this good deal. What happens in that week span where you're like, I'm not getting it from St. Louis, I'm going to sign with Vancouver? Walk us through the whole process, because I think it's fascinating.
Okay, the whole process is I played a year and a half up in St. Louis and started to establish myself. I was playing with Lee Stempniak and Jay McClement as kind of a kid line that was climbing up the ranks. We were probably a third line in my second year, but checking other teams' better players and really relied on and felt like I had some worth. I was playing physical and kind of, cutting my teeth the way that guys used to.
You led the league in hits. I think you had 240 hits.
Yeah, a bit of a
put up 20-some points.
When they stopped the holdup by the defenseman and it was strict where you couldn't even give the guy a bump, and it was like I could dump it in, strong side D man could not touch me, and the weak side D man was going face first into the wall and I was licking my chops on him, and I had to fight probably more than I ever wanted to because I was just taking liberties, but it's how I was establishing myself in the league. So I felt like I was just, proving myself, and it was after the season expecting or hoping to sign an extension with St. Louis, and there was zero contract talks, and it was July, it was coming up on free agency, and I really didn't even know the process. And my agent said, hey, it's July 1 tomorrow. Anything can happen. Just keep your phone on. And I was truthfully in Hawaii on my honeymoon with my wife. And so Hawaii time, it was 8 or 9 a.m. Hawaii time, and my phone rings and my agent's laying it out. And obviously with your agent, you've got projections on what your next contract was. And I had okay numbers, but they weren't great. And back then I was, if St. Louis offered me probably $1 million or $1.5 million for 1 or 2 years, I would have signed it. And so July 1 comes, free agency opens, and we get the call from Vancouver that says, hey, we want you for 3 years at 2.5, and we're going to include signing bonus. And, I sat back and was like, St. Louis has done nothing to try to, and it was Larry Plow back then before Doug Armstrong's reign, but they've done nothing to try to sign me. And now I've got a legit contract in front of me that I'm going to make more, in year one than I thought I would have in 2 years probably with St. Louis. And this is a 3-year deal. It's guaranteed money. It's $7.5 million with signing bonus. Like, I have to sign this.
And Vancouver's a great team at that point. They got the Sedins, they got Burrows, they got all these great players.
Yeah, it was like they were Roberto Luongo, like they were a contender. So I signed the deal, and truthfully, in our hotel room in Hawaii, my wife's like, but we love St. Louis and it's such a great city. And I'm like, I don't want to go to Canada. It's cold. I'm like, Kelly, do you have any idea about Vancouver? Like, Vancouver is an incredible town. And we started looking it up, like where it is. And it's like one of the most livable cities in the world. So all of a sudden she's excited about it. And my agent calls me back and like, we signed the offer sheet, you know, St. Louis left 7 days to match. And it was like 3 or 4 hours. And they called me back and said, hey, we're matching this. Like, this is not a question. We know you're part of the future. And, I was humbled by it. And so that contract, then St. Louis just matches it and you play for St. Louis, and Vancouver loses nothing. They just kind of helped you make more money, I guess, at that point. So we were back to St. Louis, and my wife was like, oh, but I was kind of getting high on the Vancouver idea.
The sushi, David, the sushi.
Yeah, exactly. The walking everywhere. So that was it. And then St. Louis reciprocated and offer sheeted Steve Bernier as kind of repercussions for offer sheeting me. And that was kind of how that all went down. There was never any hard feelings I felt from St. Louis or from me to St. Louis. I think it was one of those things where they felt if they could get past July 1 with the restricted free agency, and I hadn't had an offer sheet, now they had all the leverage. And I probably was making less than $1 million because I really didn't have another option. I think they kind of had some Monday morning regrets on that one, but so be it. And it worked out, I think, well for both sides. I think I scored 30 goals that year, and it probably was underpaid shortly thereafter. You know, not that you're ever underpaid at $2.5 million to play hockey, because we're so grateful to have that opportunity. But market wise, I think if it would have been a 1-year deal and I scored 30 goals, now you get into one of these crazy contracts that are, you know, especially at that time, there were no term limits. There were no, you know, front load, back load, any of that stuff. It was just do your deal and, average it out.
So do you have a conversation with the GM? Does Larry Plow call you and be like, hey, David, sorry, I dropped the ball. We should have talked to you earlier, or was there nothing?
No, it was John Davidson at the time, and he called, just said, or he was the president, just said, hey, big boy, you know, you're part of this team going forward. You're a big part of the core. We're happy to have you for 3 years. And you know what? Business is business. We'll see you in camp. And there was never like this guy, you know, tried to leave or any of that stuff. I think they knew they dropped the ball a little bit and ended up paying for it. But at that point, we might have been struggling to make the floor with, you know, we had some big boys when I got there with Bill Guerin and Doug Waite, Dallas Drake, Keith Kachuk making a lot of dough. That deal, and then maybe we signed Paul Kariya shortly thereafter to maybe get to the floor at that point.
So I want to ask about the Olympics. For a guy, you played in 2 different Olympics, 2010, 2014, and for a guy who didn't really think he had a shot at making the NHL, playing on the highest stage, repping your country is just kind of amazing. What do you think about when you look back on those runs?
Amazing is a good adjective. That was probably the most fun. You know, I would put that in the Stanley Cup final I was in with Boston as the most fun I'd have playing hockey. Unfortunately, took second place in both those championship scenarios. But that stage, to wear your country's colors, to be, you know, in the Olympic Village in Vancouver, to have your family around, to be in North America, to feel safe, to walk around the city, like, what an awesome, I just think for hockey, that was a awesome Olympics to have. Sochi, similar experience. I was TJ Oshie's roommate in Sochi. So when he's scoring 15 goals in the shootout, my favorite story is he came back after doing NBC and all this stuff, and he's got makeup on, and he comes in the room. He's like, don't you think they're making kind of a too big a deal out of this? And I'm like, you have no idea like what you just did. You're like, that's kind of humble guy he is. Back to 2010, just the way that team came together, Ryan Miller's performance in net with Tim Thomas, you know, standing by, and Jonathan Quick, you know, waiting in the wings. What a team that was. And really forever memories that, no one can take away and that are very fond for my hockey playing days.
Your wife just walking around Vancouver going, imagine.
Yeah. Which condo would it have been? Yeah.
It would have been great.
What's the appreciation on the houses here? It's probably ridiculous right now.
So in 2014, you guys didn't really do nearly as well. I think you got blown out in the bronze medal game. Like, what do you think was the biggest difference over the last, the 4 years prior?
Tim, ouch.
Yeah, that's a kick in the groin. Well, I think just the way it laid out, we played Canada in the semifinals. So we lost to them 1-0 in the semifinal game. That was obviously to go to the gold medal game, where we would have played Russia again in the gold medal, and we had beaten them in a extended shootout before. So I think the layout, it would have been nice to wait to play those guys in the gold medal game, and maybe it looks a little different on your score sheet from a few miles away. I think there's a huge letdown to losing to those guys in the semis. Finland seemingly, I don't want to misstate this because it all matters, and I would have coveted a bronze medal from that Olympics, but the letdown, Finland seemed to regroup more and have that, you know what, let's get this done. And they just they played their game, and we were not on it, and they wiped us out in the bronze medal game, like you said. So left with our fourth place medals and our tails tucked between our legs.
So 2011, you named captain of the Blues. Was that a surprise, or did you kind of know that was coming when Brewer got traded?
We had a sports psychologist with that team, and he was asking to meet with me during the summer, and that was different than happened before, and talking a lot of leadership things. So, you know, in those meetings, then it came out that his objective was to vet me to see how, if he thought, you know, if he could verify that I would have been a good candidate for the next captain of the team. Obviously, I was passing his psychological examination of me, and
no kidding.
Yeah,
that's wild stuff. Was he around the team always, or just hired him?
He was a guy that did at the draft or at the combine, did some stuff with me too, and all the stuff like an ink blot test, and like tell him stories about this, and look at this picture and tell me the story. And it was intensive, but it was very productive for me, and stuff he could revisit then, you know, as I'm captain in 2011, he's referring back to an ink blot I did in 2003 and telling me, well, remember this when you were talking about, you know, this story, and this is how it applies to you. And it was all really good and still relevant to my humanity. So he was still with the team when they won the cup in 19. I think he's still with the team. So we called him the Wizard, and he'd just kind of lurk around and grab a couple guys and try to help them along the way, and help them to be more productive, and you know, also identify some troubles if need be with you know, staving off some mental health issues.
That's funny because we have that in Chicago. We've had it on a few other teams, and I steer clear. Yeah. For whatever reason. I'm like, don't talk to me, don't look at me, I'm good. Like, and you're telling that he actually helps. Like he does, you know, for in any way possible. It was a benefit to your success.
Yeah, he would remind you, or just give you
no
things.
Kidding.
Think about, like, first one of the ink blot I think was a soaring dragon or something like that. So he'd be like, you're that soaring dragon, that Navy SEAL. You want to go into that combat, and you want to just grab your guys and just remember that's who you are. And you know, when it's time to drop the puck tomorrow, lead those guys. And it was just like, you know, if nothing else, it was a shot in the arm and a boost of confidence that you are the leader, and you know, can go out there and assert yourself, and guys will follow.
Well, it obviously worked because you, gosh, I think I'm correct. You're the second longest tenured captain in St. Louis Blues history, which is not nothing. It's kind of cool. You followed a line of captains, which are the who's who of people, the Gretzkys, the Prongers, Brett Hull, Al McInnes. Did you ever talk to any of those guys to get any, you know, advice, or was it just like, here you go, kid, here's the keys to the car?
Well, Al was probably around the team most, and I don't know if you ever met Al, but he's one of the most level-headed, you know, underspoken, just kind of, he's around and even keeled, and we had the same agent as well, so there was a lot of common connection there, along with, you know, a guy like Keith Tkachuk, who helped me assert myself in the league, and a guy that I tried to model my game after a bit. So those guys all are around town and willing to help, and to have just conversations with them, and less with current circumstances of the team and how we need to organize or how we need to lead each other, but more of general direction and history with the team, because I think there's such a power in connecting with the guys of the past and what that what that crest means to them and what they've sacrificed to get the organization to where it is now, into what it should mean to each and every player, because it could just be another jersey that you're punching clock and trying to score goals and trying to make a paycheck, or you're willing to do whatever it takes to, bring glory to that uniform. And the latter obviously produces much better results than the former.
Well, yeah, and you formed an identity for this team. I remember I played for Minnesota and Chicago, and we battled with you guys. I loved going into St. Louis because I knew exactly what I was going to get. You were going to get punched in the face. You guys were going to dump the puck in, and you were going to just try to run over you. And I still vividly remember being a defenseman and getting hemmed in my own zone for a good 4 minutes. And it's just wave after wave after wave of, like, it was Backus, Berglund, Steen, McDonald, Boys, Oshie, Sabatka, like just insane amounts of talent, but everybody hit, everybody pulled the rope, and that starts from you. So it's kind of cool to hear your mindset where it's not just like, okay, I'm the captain. You actively wanted to build the team in your mold, I guess you could say, because you guys were so hard to play against.
Yeah, that was very intentional, but I also think it was realistic that we knew that we couldn't play a skill game against a lot of the teams we were playing against. We were maybe underskilled, but if we brought the will, especially the way the game was played back then, where you could hem a team and not every defenseman now can make a great first pass. If you can't make a great first pass, like, and all your plan is to clear out the front of the net and like block shots, you're not in the league, because that's not the way the league's trended. Now it seems like every defenseman can escape the corner, skate by a couple guys, and then send it rink wide to another guy to create offense. And back then, no offense to some of the bigger defensemen,
Careful.
You could kind of, if they couldn't get the puck out and off the glass right away, it was like, okay, we might be able to get a line change, get a fresh line out here, stay in the zone. And the other trick is that first couple of years in St. Louis, we had the worst boards in the world, that we knew if you tried to go D to D behind the net, it was sticking to the wall, or any dump was going to stick to the wall. And it was painful to pluck it off there and try to make a pass. So anything that got deep, or you try to go D to D, it was green light to go hammer someone and put pressure on them, because it wasn't going to be pretty with them picking it off. So try to play to your knowledge and your advantage. And that was something we did.
I think I've fought versus St. Louis more than any team in the NHL. And there's nothing better than just fighting a Cam Jansen or a Ryan. I loved going into St. Louis. Why did we never fight, David?
Because you're way too big for me. I would have run from you, sent DJ King or Cam Jansen or
I fought him, yeah.
DJ Crombeen or one of those guys. I mean, you're out of my league. Let's be honest.
You fought Taves a lot. Why do you always fight Johnny Taves?
One time he fought me.
Twice? I thought it was twice. One time. All right. Well, you mentioned, you're the captain. You take over. You're having a great run in St. Louis. You have this team in your mold, and then you become a UFA. And everybody and their brother is like, he's got to sign in St. Louis. That's their identity. You sign with the Bruins. Is that tough? Is that a tough decision? Was St. Louis offering you anything, or was it, again, radio silence? What happens that offseason in 2016?
So story gets deeper.
Let's see it. We got lots of time, David.
Yeah, Alex Pietrangelo wisely schedules his wedding for July the 2nd in St. Louis. Groom's dinner is June 30th on the Thursday. Free agency is Friday, July 1st. So I'm in St. Louis. We still had a house there, obviously, because we were playing there. And it's groom's dinner night before, and you got the interview process, and we're back and forth with St. Louis. I wanted 5 years. I wanted to play 1,000 games, and I wanted to stay in St. Louis and finish my career there. And we thought the market would be 6 years, maybe 5 years, around a 6 number. So I was willing to take a hometown discount. But they were, barely reaching the 5 number for.
Well, what's a hometown discount? If you're looking for 5 at 6, 5 at 5?
Yeah, would have been. And they wouldn't even discuss a 5th year. It was like, I want to spend the rest of my career in St. Louis
Yeah.
in 5 years. And at no number would they discuss a fifth year.
Is that right?
That never got done. It was like, okay, we're going to see what happens in free agency. And then it came, and Boston stepped up and said, after talking with Bergeron and Marchand, that interview period we had, and Don Sweeney and Claude Julien, the coach at the time, it was like, this is going to be a great fit. I don't know why you want another right-handed centerman, but I'll be the third center behind Bergeron and Krejci. And if I'm a third line center on any team, I feel like we got a really good team.
Mm-hmm.
So free agency came, and they were signing bonus and no move clause, and then a limited no trade. And I was like, this is everything we'd asked for. And so, you know what? We went back to St. Louis one more time, and they weren't talking a fifth year. And so it was Boston we went.
So were any other teams in the mix? Because you were a highly coveted UFA. Like, you were probably the top guy in the market. Did any teams come knocking where they kind of piqued your interest a little bit?
Yeah, I talked with Minnesota a bit. They were going to have to make a move. Montreal called, and then I had always had interest in playing in Nashville. So I had poked out to David Poyle, and he was saying that there's interest, but they would have to make a move to create some space for me. So, there was other interest. It wasn't as hot and heavy as Boston was. So, I'd loved my time visiting Boston, and then to know the team and the pedigree that they had, and they hadn't made the playoffs in 2 years, but they had great goalie. They had Z and Bergeron and Marsh and Kretsch and just all the guys that had been there forever. So said, what an opportunity, and away we went.
So you were obviously at Peter Angelo's wedding. Did you sign, when did you sign the deal and say, hey, here, Alex, here's your team? Did you ever have that conversation with him?
Well, truthfully, that last year of my contract in St. Louis, I kind of had him by my side for everything, knowing that if I wasn't going to be around for, past that deal, in which you have the whole year from July 1, the year prior, till the, July 1 when you're a free agent to sign an extension. So to me, the writing was kind of on the wall that I think you see guys that are eligible for that extension. It happens in that first 6 months. And like a guy like Gabe Landeskog right now, maybe they're just playing the game of chicken, but if it was going to get done, I feel like it would have gotten done already.
Yeah.
So I had Alex next to me in all the meetings, and we had a small leadership group then. It was him and Alex Steen and myself, where we were doing some leadership coaching with a corporate leadership trainer and in all the meetings. So he kind of knew the ropes, and I felt like he was in a good position if I didn't come back. And then, so the day in between his groom's dinner and his wedding is July 1st. I signed with Boston. He's got a thing for the wedding party, which my wife and I were both in. So we go to the Cardinals game in a suite, right after I'd signed in Boston, and they put me on the Jumbotron, and the people in St. Louis give me a standing ovation as I just signed in free agency to leave St. Louis. And I was like, this city really does love me. And you know what, I'm going to miss things like this. So that was a nice kind of going away present. We had the wedding the next night, and, then shortly after he was named captain, it was his turn.
So you get to Boston, and obviously this is the first time you're playing for an NHL team besides St. Louis. What were some of the differences that struck you right away as far as the culture, the locker room, the personalities? How was it different from St. Louis?
Yeah, I kind of sold it to my wife that, hey, it's an original six, it's big market, it's going to be, I don't know if I expected Toronto, but it was going to be, kind of, these are the big boys of the league, and we're coming from the small market St. Louis, and all of a sudden it's going to be everything, top notch. And, we got there, and in honesty, when I was in the room, I was waiting for that special sauce to show up, to be like, this is why Boston sucks to play against, and this is why they're good every year, and this is why they've been to 2 cup finals, and won, and I just didn't see it. And then you start talking with some of the leadership, and not that it was dysfunctional, but it wasn't organized. And type A me was like, well, here's some simple things, and we need to have some connection here. And it wasn't awful, but it with small amounts of organization, it was greatly improved. And then, we talked about the sports psychologist. Patrice Bergeron has his own sports psychologist, and he brought him in to do a small meeting with just the leadership group. And then after that, probably bi-weekly, he was in facilitating team discussion and common, some psychological principles, but just team open communication and connection, which went so far. And Bergie's one of the most humble, down to earth, if you could clone a perfect human and hockey player, it's Patrice Bergeron. And what a great place to start. And him and Z and the core that they now had some structure and connection, and Stanley Cup final, a couple of years later. And, we lost to Tampa my second year there, and then we're in the final in my third year. And, they're knocking on the door and looking at President Cups or President's trophies or whatever they call it. Never had one, so I don't know the name of it.
Something like that. So did you institute all that stuff? Were you the guy, like, did you feel comfortable enough because it's intimidating going into a new locker room. I've done it a few times. Even when you're established, you don't want to, rock the boat. They're a successful team. Did you dip a toe in, or did you just jump in and be like, what you guys are doing, this is garbage?
Well, there wasn't really garbage. It was
I know.
And you know how it is. Like some teams, like you walk into the locker room and it's like nobody's like reaching out to you or grabbing you aside, and you're just kind of like, I'm going to do my thing and I'm going to get some equity in this room, and then I can start to have a voice, because you got to establish yourself or whatever. The old way was like, game one, I'm going to fight somebody and show the boys that I'm here and I'm in it. Z pulled me aside maybe day one or day two and said, hey, I respect you as a leader, and we haven't made the playoffs here in 2 years. And if you see something that needs to be done, like tell me, let's get it done. We're in this together. And to me, that was an incredible moment for me to just be like, okay, they want me here to be part of this group and not to hold back. And, from then I felt empowered to be like, this could be done better. This could be done better. This could be done better. And those guys with open arms, relished it. And we just got better and better after that.
So did you actually like see that transformation happen in your time there, where what you were trying to implement was working?
No question. I think, again, I am very I make spreadsheets for everything. Like I keep lists and I'm intentional, and calendars and organizers, and that's just my personality. So it's almost secretary work that needed to be done, and being like, we should meet as a leadership group on our own, every week or two. And we should have separate roles, where if we don't have specific roles of to me, one of the more important ones was off ice captain, of team togetherness, team parties organizer. It shouldn't be the week before Halloween and we don't have a team Halloween party scheduled yet. We got a night off, we're having a team Halloween party. And even if we're a little groggy for the next game, that togetherness we gained in that team Halloween party, every team wins the game after rookie party, because you all had the best time of your season together. You had such team togetherness, and you look at each other and you're like, we got to get this done somehow. And you go and get it done. And to me, those opportunities, if you don't have someone being intentional about that, you look at each other a week before and be like, are we having a Halloween party? We don't have a place to do it. We don't have does anyone have costumes? What's the schedule look like? And then it doesn't happen. You're like, missed that. Okay. Super Bowl party, which the Patriots were always in. So it was very nice to have, especially after they win Super Bowls and then guys go downtown and live it up. But those types of team togetherness, we needed a guy to, spearhead that. We needed a guy to make sure that the families and the wives were taken care of, and that everyone was, feeling good about their games, or when their wives and kids came to the game. We needed someone to be the direct go-between between the coach or the GM. All those different roles that we need someone to talk with the community relations department and say, this is a good event that we do and we love it. This one really sucks and guys dread it. Can we change that? Or can we, you know what, they're all piled into November. That's no good for us. Can we switch those around or sprinkle? Like, those things can be segregated and appointed and kind of managed so that everyone's got their role. They can report to the leadership group, and then you can have some known commodities and who's taking care of what, and it just functions better. And so that was kind of part of what my role was coming there, and it worked out all right.
So who's the party planner? Who's planning the big the Super Bowl party, the Masters tournament pool?
Well, Tuca was the guy that we kind of appointed that. Tuca and Kretsch together were party planning guys, and Kretsch is a good under the radar guy, and then Tukes is he knows what he wants and he's going to make it happen. So it all worked out.
When you were there, it was like championship city. The Red Sox were winning. The Celtics had a great team. The Pats. Did you pal around with those guys? Because I know, like, you see athletes here and there. Did you hang out with those guys? Were they in your life at all?
Well, the Patriots were in Foxborough, which some of the guys even lived in Rhode Island. I don't know if it's tax wise or just cost of living wise. Not much with those guys. I think Joe Kelly and Torrey Krug might have had the closest relationship. I think Goskowski and Tuca had some common connections somehow, but there wasn't a lot of intermingling of sports groups there. But there was certainly a high standard set by all of those clubs and not that Boston has a low standard to begin with, but when everyone is winning a championship, when you lose in Game 7 of the finals, it feels like a failure. Like, and it's not. Like, I don't know how many great players never played in the finals, let alone won a championship. So it's a great accomplishment to play in a finals. Not that you're happy with it, but looking back, say 3 years removed, you go, that was an incredible run. And we had to sacrifice a ton. And we were one game away from winning a Stanley Cup. And you got to be proud of that. Just like you have to be proud of, a silver medal that you lose in overtime, or playing in another Olympics and losing to Canada in a 1-0 game. Like, to me, I think the older I get, the more I appreciate some of those hardships as growing moments, but also as accomplishments that, they could have been better, but you also need to acknowledge that those were great moments.
Well, you mentioned the Game 7, the loss. Going into that finals, when St. Louis won, were you like, come on? Or were you relishing the opportunity to play against St. Louis in the finals?
I was like, come on. I think, that sort of emotional layer was unnecessary for a guy in his 13th season, finally playing in his first final, to have layered on top of that. That being said, and it was the third year out of St. Louis. So there had been a bunch of turnover, but still probably half the team were guys that I was buddies with. And now it was me or them going to win a cup. And I certainly wanted it to be me, obviously. And so there was some, I don't want to say numbness, but having to park those emotions to play the game. Going to St. Louis was probably the most difficult part, just because a city that had loved me at a Cardinals game as I was leaving, now, walking down the street to go get some food from the hotel, you're still recognizable as who you are, and the people are much less kind when there's a Stanley Cup on the line. And to see that side of the city was, I think even after we left St. Louis, it was like, that's home. We spent 10 years there from 22 to 32. We grew up there. We had so many connections, and mostly not in hockey, of great people that we had met in an amazing city that was going to be our hometown. We were going to retire there. Well, seeing that side of the city, like, it took me a good 18 months to even think about moving. Like, Kelly's like, well, we're still going back there. And I'm like, no, like, why would I want to go back there? And it's, saw the ugly side and going to have to be reminded of that Game 7 loss all the time. And now, those wounds have healed a bit and it's back on the list of potential places to settle down, but we haven't made that decision, what that's going to look like either.
So you mentioned, obviously you retired this past season. You played in Anaheim for a few seasons, battled a lot of injuries. You're a super smart guy. Like you're obviously handle yourself well. This has been like a crazy, interesting conversation. Do you have any aspirations of staying in hockey, going into management, going into whatever avenue you really want to go into?
Objective one right now is to be dad. Two young kids, a 6-year-old and a 3.5-year-old. So I think once they're in school full time, which will be probably 2 years, I'd like to do something more involved. That doesn't preclude the idea of staying in the game in some role or whatever that might look like. But I want to make sure I'm not missing those milestones and those.
It's huge. Yeah.
I mean, I just feel like there's some dad guilt there for sure. I felt that even in summers when I've been playing of like, I missed this and this. So I'm not going to really, take more time away from you. I'm going to be present and be around you guys as much as I can this off season, because it's just some time you relish. So I want to be that all the time. And if I can fit a role in that I can, be present, but also stay in the game, that would be great. And if I can't, doing nothing, I've been very fortunate to play long enough where I don't need to do something. But I've also run the gamut of my wife's, put her goals, dreams, and aspirations aside to follow me across the country for 15 years. She got her nursing degree and she's, really driven to do things, especially philanthropically with, our charity Athletes for Animals, that maybe she gets to pick and I can be full-time dad to stay at home and let her chase something for a while. And if I can fit something into what's left, then that's fine. But, the flip side of that, I always wanted to do, I was in electrical engineering in college, and I wanted to do engineering school and then law school and do patent law. That maybe I'd still do law school, and it's probably not patent law, but go back to, doing something philanthropically or to just help the world be a better place in those regards. So the big answer is no clue, but all options on the board. And I know what my priority is at the moment.
Which is great, because I think people just get this idea of, you're a professional hockey player. You have so much free time. You play the game and you go home. It's like, no, like during the season, when you're at home, you're not present. Like you're focused on the game. You're always planning your next meal, your next nap, your next workout. And my wife can attest to that. She tells me like, you were there, but you weren't there.
Yeah.
And so that was her biggest thing for me retiring. She's like, you need to retire. We have 4 kids now. It's time. And it was huge. And so now it was the best decision I ever made to retire. And it sounds like you kind of have a plan. I finished my school at the U of M. So I went to Michigan Tech, as you know, and I took classes at U of M, got my engineering degree, and away I went. So you never know. I need an electrical engineer in my office. So if you ever need a job, just saying, David, we could be the only NHL tandem engineering group in the country, maybe.
Well, maybe we might need a couple cold beverages to iron off some differences that we've had over the years. But
lunch, arm wrestle breaks, it's fine. Like we can make it work.
Yeah.
That's so funny. So I want to end it with this question. It kind of struck me when we started this interview. You mentioned how the game's changed and how it's a different game, and it was interesting. Does David Backes, 17 years old, make it in the NHL if he starts right now today?
No.
Really?
No.
It's a definitive no.
No.
Really? So I don't know. I don't think so. I think you'd find a way. You're a good hockey player, David.
Yeah, but how did I get into the league? In a skill league, I am bottom 10% of the league in skill.
I think you look around the league and the guys who are valuable now, there's a very high premium for a guy who can move like you. You're very humble guy.
But look at a guy like Mark Stone, who is knocked on his skating all the time, which I was.
Mm-hmm.
He is productive point-wise at a level that I never was. And I'm the same way with Mark Stone, not to get off topic or pick on him, but like watching him, I'm like, it's ugly what he does. But then you watch and you're like, every puck he's around, he wins the puck. Every play there is to be made, he makes the play. So I guess I see myself as a Mark Stone, ugly type player with those playmaking abilities that he has. Just, I don't think I have that.
I don't think a defenseman in the world is nervous of Mark Stone going into the corner.
But would you be in today's game nervous of me coming into the corner? Like in my head, playing in the last couple of years was, I've got a free run at that guy. He put himself in a vulnerable position. In my early days, it was green light, put him on the ice.
Mm-hmm.
And not that you wanted to hurt him, but you were going to hit him as hard as you can. So he never wanted to touch the puck the rest of the game if he returned. Now it's 2 to 4 games on your first suspension and probably, 6 to 10 on your next suspension.
Well, that's going through your head when you're forechecking. That's interesting.
100%. Or there's a defenseman coming at you and you're like, I got a great angle at this guy.
Yeah.
I should light him up. But if he shifts at the last second and now I just clip his head, I'm getting suspended for it. So there's either less intensity to that contact or it's not contact. And if that happened early in my career, I was shown that clip and embarrassed for it, maybe in front of the team and not just on a side note with a coach. Now it's not even mentioned because that's not part of what we're doing.
What's funny is I always think of when, this is how you hit, this is how you don't hit. Before every season, the NHL sends out a video.
Yeah.
And it shows you the correct way to hit and the correct way not to hit. If you were to play that video now from 10 years ago, every single one of those hits that was a correct hit would be misconduct.
Certainly.
It's so funny how things have changed so fast. Do you think it's a good thing for the league, or it's going to end up just kind of eating itself where it's not hockey anymore?
Well, also as a guy with multiple concussions to my history, I don't know. I think the game looks better from a skill standpoint, but I also am a traditionalist and like that warrior mentality that you needed where an opening draw, you looked across the face-off and it was like, you or me today, and you're going to have to put me, the trainer's going to have to tell me to stop in order for me to, stop tonight. Good luck, making me quit. That's the part of the game that I think made it glorious back in the day and still has appeal. And we don't need to lose that. Do I want guys getting hit in the head unnecessarily and having traumatic brain injuries and life-altering concussions? No, but I think there's also a component of like Jeff Kutcher that was with University of Michigan. I went to see him when I had the last concussion I had. He does like an HD MRI of your brain and does like brain mapping of the waves and like gets down to how your brain looks and not just, tick number 1, tick number 2. You had a headache for 2 days, concussion. Like to me, that's such a black and white when there's so much gray. How's your baseline on your impact test?
And everyone's different too, which is.
How has that changed over the years? I'm interested to know, like I started taking that test in junior in 2002 in Lincoln. What does my baseline then, because it's the same test, some of the same words compared to 20 years later and 9 or 10 documented concussions, which Dr. Kutcher thinks is probably 2 or 3 or 4 over, but there's also the ones that weren't documented early in my career where I know I got hit in the head and I don't want to be a guy with concussions on my history to A, lose my spot in the lineup, or B, to be a damaged product to sign another contract. So I think the system's flawed, the self-reporting's flawed, and the doctor medical expense to really dive into what's behind this, and everyone's got their guru, is a bit flawed and surface level rather than 7 days you can come back. Like, I think it could be better all around and not to just be a poo-poo on the system, but part of it is on the player to self-report or to have a independent third party
spotter
doesn't know about it. Let's get an evaluation and then we can come together and say, yeah, I'm dinged up and we got to take some time off.
Sounds like they need a couple spreadsheets, David. That's what it sounds like.
Both Excel and numbers installed on my computer.
Holy, don't want to brag, but I got them both. All right, one last one. Your most memorable hockey memory on the ice, could be college, could be high school, could be pros. One thing that you're like, gosh, that was super cool.
Oh, the first thing that comes to mind is finally beating Chicago in the playoffs at home in a game 7. And then we went, that was my last year in St. Louis. We ended up in the conference final, lost to San Jose. But to finally get over that hump of Chicago was our roadblock forever in the playoffs of, didn't matter if we were the better team. They just seemed to elevate in the playoffs, or we were up 2-0 in a series against them, against LA, and didn't have that killer instinct to put them away, or they found something to rally around. So I think getting over that hump, beating them in that game 7, it was my first game 7 I'd played in, was that's a memory that I won't forget at home. And to finally see those guys dejected at the end of a series as you shook their hand, rather than us being the team that was feeling terrible.
Extra hard handshake to Jonathan Toews. Take that, John.
You know what? There's always something brought up with Jonathan Toews and I don't know if he spoke to the relationship, but
he hates you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I take that as a compliment. Like, everybody I hate that I play, and that's hate, I think, is a professional hate. Like,
yeah, not a personal, not.
There's the respect. Like, Jonathan Toews and I have worked out in the same workout room, and it's said hi, and there's a cordialness and a respect factor that is, I think, remarkable about the game, where we can go pound each other. And I think we both know the nature of our on-ice relationship is that he's a better hockey player than I am, but I can annoy him and maybe pound him down and get under his skin and get him thinking about things other than hockey. And maybe he's got to look twice before he touches a puck because he knows I'm going to be breathing down his throat and doesn't want to get hammered. And so there's a delicate balance there. And sometimes he got the better of me in the matchup. Sometimes I got the better of him in the matchup. But there's a respect there, and I hated playing against him, and I'm hoping he hated playing against me. But the guys I hated playing against the most, when I ended up being teammates with them, were the best teammates. And that's held true in almost every scenario that I've had in the game. And I would guess that that would be the case with Jonathan Toews as well.
Is that the same kind of deal with Jamie Benn? Because we kind of tease out people we're going to interview, and everyone's like, ask him about Jamie Benn. What's going on there?
Well, Jamie Benn and I have a love-hate relationship. I mean, a big, burly guy that I think plays a similar game. Again, probably more skilled than I ever was, but a big guy that likes to assert himself as kind of the alpha dog in a game. And there's times where the alpha dogs got to smash into each other and show their teeth. And I think we fought 3 times. Most recently, it was an 11:30 start in Dallas. I think it was after our rookie party. And so he asked me to go on the opening draw, and I was like, I'm not even sweating yet. And he's like, we're going. And I'm like, okay. And so we went after it. And you know what? I think those are the guys that when everybody's retired and we're old and not in good shape anymore, and we have some sort of NHL reunion event to be at, that's going to be a fun beverage to have and reminisce and give each other a hard time, because I'm a huge fan of his game. I think he played the right way. And I felt it was necessary. I felt it was necessary when we played him, Rick Nash or Corey, like those guys are elite players. And if I can take them off the ice for 5 minutes and have them think about punching me rather than scoring goals, I win. And so that was my mentality. And Jamie Benn was one of those guys that I needed to get physical with and try to push a couple of his teammates where he felt he had to come answer to me. And then, not that I ever won a fight, but that I could stand up for myself, stand up for my teammates, and take them off the ice was, to me, something that would help our team win.
Unbelievable. No, I totally agree. And I hope I'm there for that conversation between you and Jamie. I think that'd be fascinating. That'd be so cool. But anyways, thank you so much, man, for doing this. You were unbelievable.
My pleasure.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Good luck with everything. We're going to be in Minnesota maybe next month. Maybe I'll give you a show. We can grab a drink, chop it up a little bit.
Please do.
But anyways, David Backes, everybody, thank you for joining us. We'll talk to you next week. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Dropping the Gloves with John Scott, a member of the Nation Network of Podcasts. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from to never miss an episode.